Pivot tables are one of the most powerful tools in Excel for analyzing and summarizing large amounts of data quickly and efficiently. Select the table or click anywhere inside your data so Excel can recognize the full dataset automatically. Next, go to the Insert tab and choose Pivot Table. Excel will suggest the data range automatically and ask where you want the pivot table to be placed. Confirm the options and create the pivot table. At this point, you will see an empty pivot table layout along with the Pivot Table Fields panel. Now, focus on the Pivot Table Fields panel. This is where the real power begins. You will see your column headers listed as fields, with 4 main areas underneath: rows, columns, values, and filters. You can choose to place your headings vertically using rows or horizontally using columns, depending on how you want to view and compare the data. Remember, to show the Pivot Table Field panel, you must select the Pivot Table Report area on the left-hand side. Drag descriptive fields into rows or columns to organize the data. This allows you to structure your pivot table in a way that makes sense for your analysis, showing each item clearly and avoiding repeated entries. By arranging these fields, you can create a logical hierarchy that groups similar items together and provides a clear overview of the dataset. Additionally, using descriptive fields effectively helps you identify trends, patterns, and outliers more efficiently. Properly structured rows and columns allow you to summarize large datasets at a glance, highlight areas that need attention, and make the analysis more intuitive and actionable without the need for complex calculations. Drag numerical fields into values, which is suitable only for figures and numbers, to calculate totals, counts, or averages. Excel automatically summarizes the data for you. Use the filters area for data such as countries, dates, or categories when you want to focus on specific portions of the data without changing the layout of the pivot table. Filters allow you to drill down into your dataset, making it easy to analyze subsets of data without creating multiple pivot tables. You can also select multiple items within a filter, which allows you to compare multiple categories, periods, or regions at once. For example, instead of viewing data for a single category, you can select several categories simultaneously to see the combined totals or trends. This is especially useful when you want to compare groups side by side or analyze patterns across multiple segments. Using multiple filters together can also help answer more complex questions, such as identifying which combinations of factors contribute most to certain outcomes, without altering the structure of your pivot table. However, when you select multiple items in a filter, the pivot table will treat them as a combined group and will not identify or separate each individual item. For instance, if you select multiple countries in the filter, the pivot table will show the combined totals for those countries, but it will not break down the results by country. If you want to see each item separately, you should add that field, such as country, to the columns or rows area. It's also important to remember that if you change the original source data, those changes will not appear in the pivot table automatically. To reflect any updates, you must refresh the pivot table, ensuring your analysis always stays accurate and up to date. Refreshing can be done manually, or you can set the pivot table to refresh automatically whenever the workbook is opened, which is especially useful for reports that are updated frequently. Additionally, if new rows or columns are added to your source data, refreshing ensures that these new entries are included in your pivot table calculations. Without refreshing, any new data will be ignored, which could lead to incomplete or misleading insights. It's also good practice to check that your source data remains structured properly, with clear headers and no blank rows, as pivot tables rely on a clean dataset to function correctly. You can add multiple fields to any specific area in a pivot table to gain deeper insights. For example, you might add a field such as month to the columns area to display data broken down by each month, allowing you to compare trends across different periods. Pivot tables are very flexible, so if you later decide that a field is no longer needed or is cluttering the view, you can simply remove it from its area without affecting the rest of the table. This makes it easy to experiment with different layouts, focus on the most relevant data, and create customized views that suit your analysis needs. The value field settings feature in pivot tables allows you to control how numerical data is summarized and displayed. By default, Excel typically sums the values, but with value field settings, you can change the calculation to other functions such as average, count, maximum, minimum, or even custom calculations. This gives you the flexibility to analyze your data from different perspectives and extract the insights you need. Additionally, you can customize the number format for the field, such as applying currency, percentage, or decimal formatting to make your pivot table more readable and professional. Using value field settings effectively ensures that your summaries are accurate, meaningful, and tailored to your specific analysis goals. If you add new fields to the original data table, such as a unit price including tax, for example, with a 2.5% tax, these new fields will not automatically appear in your pivot table. To use the new data for analysis or filtering, you must refresh the pivot table. Once refreshed, the new field will appear in the Pivot Table Fields panel, allowing you to drag it into rows, columns, values, or filters as needed. Without refreshing, any refinements or calculations based on the newly added data will not take effect, so it's important to update the pivot table whenever the source data changes to ensure your analysis remains accurate and complete. Additionally, when working with multiple new fields, refreshing regularly ensures that all new entries are included and prevents inconsistencies in your reports. You can also take advantage of Excel tables as your data source. When the pivot table is based on a table, adding new rows or columns automatically expands the source range, and a simple refresh will bring in the new fields. For more complex datasets, it's good practice to name your fields clearly and consistently, making it easier to identify and use them in the pivot table after a refresh. Finally, remember that after refreshing, you might need to readjust your pivot table layout or update filters and calculations to incorporate the new data effectively. By managing new fields properly and refreshing regularly, your pivot tables remain dynamic, accurate, and ready for advanced analysis, allowing you to extract insights from the most up-to-date dataset. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an Excel tutorial. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know what Excel tips or features you'd like us to cover next. Your support helps us create more helpful content, and we'd love to see how you apply pivot tables in your own work.